I stood frozen on the doorstep, the cardboard box of Melissa's belongings suddenly heavy in my arms. Her mother, Diana, stood in the doorway wearing nothing but a silk robe that barely reached mid-thigh, her hair wet from the shower. Our eyes locked, and in that moment, I knew my simple errand had just become anything but simple. Hey everyone, thanks for clicking on today's story. If you're enjoying these real-life dramas, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to catch more unexpected life twists like this one. Trust me, you'll want to stick around until the end of this one. The box in my hands contained the scattered remains of a 3-year relationship, a relationship I thought would last forever until Melissa decided otherwise. Little did I know that dropping off these final pieces of our past would lead to a chain of events that would completely transform my understanding of love, family, and second chances. Jason? Diana's eyes widened with recognition, her hand instinctively pulling her robe tighter. I wasn't expecting anyone. I'm sorry, I stammered, my eyes fixed firmly on her face, fighting the urge to look anywhere else. I texted Melissa that I was coming by with her things. She said to just drop them off. Diana's expression shifted from surprise to something I couldn't quite read. Melissa moved to Chicago last week. She didn't tell you? The news hit me like a physical blow. Chicago? She had always talked about moving there someday, pursuing her dream job at that prestigious marketing firm. But she had left without even saying goodbye? After 3 years together? I guess she didn't think it was important to mention, I said, trying to keep the bitterness from my voice. Can I just leave these with you? Diana hesitated, then stepped aside. Come in for a minute. You look like you could use a drink. I should have declined. I should have set the box down and walked away. But something in Diana's eyes, a kindness, an understanding, made me step across that threshold. The house was exactly as I remembered it from the countless dinners and holidays I'd spent there with Melissa. Family photos lined the hallway, including several that still featured me. Diana disappeared upstairs to change while I stood awkwardly in the living room, the box still in my arms, unsure where to set it down or if I should just leave. When she returned, properly dressed in jeans and a casual sweater, she looked more like the Diana I knew, the woman who had always treated me like a son, who had once told me she hoped I would be part of their family someday. Bourbon? She asked, already moving toward the liquor cabinet that her late husband had meticulously stocked before his passing 2 years ago. Just one, I agreed, finally setting the box down. I have to drive. Diana poured 2 glasses and handed one to me. To unexpected encounters, she said, raising her glass slightly. I took a sip, feeling the familiar burn. When did she decide to leave? About a month ago. The offer came suddenly, and she jumped at it. Diana settled onto the couch, tucking one leg beneath her. I thought she would have told you. We haven't exactly been on speaking terms, I admitted. The breakup wasn't amicable. Diana nodded slowly. She mentioned that. Though her version of events seemed rather one-sided. I took another sip, larger this time. Isn't it always? Would you like to tell me your side? Diana asked, her eyes gentle. I've always tried to be fair, Jason. Even now. And so I told her. About how Melissa had grown increasingly distant over the past year. How she'd started staying late at work, canceling our plans, pulling away emotionally. How I'd tried everything to reconnect with her, date nights, couples therapy, even suggesting a vacation. How she'd finally told me, on a rainy Tuesday evening, that she'd needed space and wasn't sure if she still loved me. I never cheated, I said firmly. I never even looked at another woman. I was planning to propose on our anniversary next month. Diana's eyes widened slightly. You were? I nodded, reaching into my pocket and pulling out the small velvet box I'd been carrying around for weeks, unable to return it to the jeweler because doing so would make the breakup real. I've been carrying this around like some kind of masochistic reminder. Diana took the box gently, opening it to reveal the emerald-cut diamond ring inside, Melissa's preferred style, which I'd noted after years of her pointing them out in jewelry store windows. "It's beautiful," Diana whispered. She would have loved it. "Well, now we'll never know," I said, taking the box back and returning it to my pocket. Diana was quiet for a moment, swirling the bourbon in her glass. "My daughter has always been restless. Like her father. Always chasing the next big thing, never quite satisfied with what's in front of her." She looked up at me, her eyes sad. "Richard was the same way. Always looking for something better, something more exciting." "Did he find it?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Diana shook her head. "He died still searching. That's the tragedy of people like them, they're so busy looking for what might be that they miss what already is." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, finishing our drinks. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the windows. I should have left, but something kept me there, perhaps the need for closure, or simply the comfort of being in a familiar place with someone who understood. "Have you eaten?" Diana asked suddenly. "I was about to make dinner when you knocked." I hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "It's just pasta," she said with a small smile. "And honestly, I'd appreciate the company. This house gets too quiet now." I followed her to the kitchen, where she began pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. Without thinking, I fell into our old routine, the same one we'd established during holiday meals when I would help her cook while Melissa and her sisters watched football with their uncles. "You remember where everything is," Diana observed as I reached for the colander without being told. "Some habits die hard," I replied, beginning to chop the vegetables she'd set out. As we cooked, we talked, really talked, about everything except Melissa. Diana told me about her book club, her volunteer work at the local hospital, her tentative steps back into dating after 2 years of widowhood. I told her about my recent promotion, my brother's new baby, the writing workshop I'd finally worked up the courage to join. By the time we sat down to eat, the awkwardness of my arrival had completely dissipated. The pasta was delicious, the wine Diana opened was perfect, and for the first time in months, I felt the knot in my chest begin to loosen. "You know," Diana said as we cleared the dishes, "Melissa made a mistake. A big one." I shook my head. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it to make you feel better," she insisted. "I'm saying it because it's true. You were the best thing that ever happened to her, and someday she'll realize that." "Maybe," I said, not wanting to contradict her but not believing it either. "But by then, I hope I'll have moved on." Diana touched my arm gently. "That's the spirit. Don't wait for her, Jason. You deserve someone who sees your worth now, not years down the road when it's too late." I helped her load the dishwasher, and when there was nothing left to clean or put away, I knew it was time to leave. Diana walked me to the door, where the box of Melissa's things still sat, forgotten during our impromptu dinner. "What should I do with these?" I asked, gesturing to the box. Diana considered it for a moment. "Leave it. I'll ship it to her, or she can get it next time she visits. You've done your part." I nodded, relieved to be rid of the final physical reminder of my relationship with Melissa. As I turned to leave, Diana surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "Don't be a stranger," she said softly. "Just because you and Melissa aren't together doesn't mean you're not still family to me." I hugged her back, unexpectedly moved by her words. "Thank you for dinner. And for everything." "Anytime," she replied, and I knew she meant it. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The ring box was still in my pocket, but it no longer felt like a weight dragging me down. Instead, it was just an object, a beautiful piece of jewelry that would someday find its rightful owner, even if that person wasn't Melissa. The next morning, I finally did what I should have done weeks ago. I returned the ring to the jeweler. The refund wouldn't cover the full cost, but that didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I was finally ready to move forward. I didn't expect to hear from Diana again, despite her invitation to stay in touch. People said things like that all the time without really meaning them. So I was surprised when, 3 days later, I received a text from her. Book club cancelled tonight. Have leftover lasagna and too much wine for one person. Dinner at 7 if you're free. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to respond. Was this weird? Would Melissa be upset if she knew I was having dinner with her mother? But then again, Melissa had moved to Chicago without even telling me. She had no right to dictate who I spent time with. Sounds great, I texted back. Can I bring dessert? And so began a strange new friendship. Diana and I had dinner together once or twice a month, sometimes at her house, sometimes at restaurants, once at a food festival downtown. We never talked about Melissa unless it came up naturally, and even then, only briefly. Instead, we discovered that we had plenty in common on our own, a love of historical fiction, a shared obsession with cooking shows, the same dry sense of humor. 3 months after that first awkward encounter on her doorstep, Diana invited me to be her +1 at a wedding. One of her colleagues was getting married, and she didn't want to go alone. I agreed, partly because I had nothing better to do that weekend, and partly because I genuinely enjoyed her company. The wedding was lovely, the reception lively. Diana looked beautiful in a deep blue dress, her silver-streaked hair elegantly styled. We danced together during the slower songs, laughed together during the silly ones. When the bride tossed her bouquet, it sailed over the crowd of single women and landed, improbably, in my hands. The room erupted in laughter, and Diana's eyes crinkled with amusement. Looks like you're next, she teased as we drove home. I think I'll wait a while, I replied, the bouquet lying on the back seat. I'm in no rush. Diana glanced at me, her expression thoughtful. You know, Jason, you're going to make someone very happy someday. You think so? I know so, she said confidently. You're kind, you're thoughtful, you're stable. Those qualities are rare, especially in men your age. Now you sound like my grandmother, I laughed. Diana rolled her eyes. I'm not that old, thank you very much. I didn't mean it like that, I said quickly. You're not old at all. You're... I trailed off, suddenly aware of the dangerous territory I was entering. I'm what? Diana prompted, her eyes still on the road. Beautiful, I finished quietly. You're beautiful, Diana. The car was silent for a long moment. Then Diana reached over and squeezed my hand briefly before returning hers to the steering wheel. Thank you, she said simply. We didn't speak of it again that night, but something had shifted between us, a subtle change in the atmosphere, a new awareness of each other not as ex-potential mother-in-law and ex-potential son-in-law, but as a man and a woman who enjoyed each other's company. 2 weeks later, Diana called me in tears. Her mother had suffered a stroke and was in the hospital. Without hesitation, I drove to meet her there, staying by her side through the long hours of waiting, bringing her coffee and sandwiches when she refused to leave her mother's bedside. When the doctors finally announced that her mother was stable and would recover, Diana collapsed against me in relief, her tears soaking my shirt. I held her close, stroking her hair, murmuring reassurances. I don't know what I would have done without you here, she whispered as we finally left the hospital, the morning sun bright in our tired eyes. You would have been fine, I assured her. You're stronger than you think. Diana looked up at me, her face pale with exhaustion but her eyes clear. Maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out. I drove her home and insisted on staying until she'd gotten some rest. I made her tea, ordered food delivery, and sat with her until she finally dozed off on the couch. As I covered her with a blanket, I realized with a start that I cared for this woman, not as my ex's mother, but as someone important in her own right. The realization should have frightened me, but instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Over the next few months, our relationship continued to evolve. We never put a label on it, never discussed what we were to each other. We simply enjoyed the connection we'd found, a connection based on mutual respect, shared interests, and genuine affection. 6 months after that first awkward encounter on her doorstep, Diana received a call from Melissa. She was coming home for a visit. She wanted to see her family, reconnect with old friends. She'd be staying at the house for a week. Diana told me this over dinner at my apartment, her expression carefully neutral. She arrives on Friday, she said, pushing her pasta around her plate. I see, I replied, equally careful. Well, I'm sure you'll enjoy having her home. Diana looked up at me, her eyes searching mine. Jason, I need to tell her about us. Whatever this is between us, I can't hide it from her. It wouldn't be right. I nodded slowly. I agree. But what exactly are we telling her? What is this between us, Diana? She set down her fork, her hands slightly trembling. I think you know what it is. At least, I know what it is for me. My heart raced as I reached across the table to take her hand. Tell me. I've fallen in love with you, she said simply, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. And I think, I hope, you might feel the same way. The words hung in the air between us, momentous and fragile. I could have said many things in that moment, that it was complicated, that people wouldn't understand, that Melissa would be hurt. All of those things were true. But none of them mattered as much as the truth in my heart. I love you too, I said, the words coming easily once I allowed them to. I didn't expect it, I didn't look for it, but here it is. Diana's smile was radiant, even as tears filled her eyes. So what do we do now? We tell Melissa together, I decided. We owe her that much. And then, whatever happens, we face it together. Diana nodded, squeezing my hand. Together. Melissa's arrival day came too quickly. Diana and I had agreed that I would come over for dinner the second night of her visit, giving mother and daughter time to reconnect before dropping our bombshell. I arrived at the house with my heart in my throat, a bottle of wine in my hand. Diana opened the door, her smile tight with nerves. Behind her, I could see Melissa in the kitchen, her back to us as she helped prepare dinner. She doesn't know you're coming, Diana whispered as she let me in. I thought it would be easier this way. I nodded, understanding her logic even as my anxiety spiked. We moved into the kitchen together, and Diana cleared her throat. Melissa, look who's here. Melissa turned, a wooden spoon in her hand, and froze when she saw me. She looked different, her hair was shorter, styled differently, and she'd lost weight. But her eyes were the same, widening now with surprise. Jason? What are you doing here? I glanced at Diana, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. Your mom invited me for dinner, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. How's Chicago? Melissa blinked, clearly thrown by my presence and my friendly tone. It's good. Great, actually. The job is everything I hoped it would be. I'm glad, I said, and was surprised to find that I meant it. You deserve to be happy. An awkward silence fell over the kitchen. Diana busied herself with the salad, while Melissa continued to stare at me as if trying to solve a puzzle. Mom didn't mention you were coming, she finally said, a note of accusation in her voice. That's because we need to talk to you about something, Diana replied, setting down the salad tongs and turning to face her daughter. Something important. Melissa's eyes